Good morning, I'm Dani Laurel. It is Wednesday, the 11th of March, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Let's get to the stories that matter today. A new House proposal would allow President Marcos to intervene in fuel pricing by suspending excise taxes whenever a national calamity or global crisis triggers extraordinary price hikes. Meralco is giving us a heads up as we enter the hotter months. Expect your electricity bills to climb by 64 centavos per kilowatt hour starting this March. While this hike does not even factor in the Middle East crisis just yet, the distributor says higher demand during the dry season will likely keep rates elevated. And the Senate floor erupted in tension yesterday as Senators Ping Lacson and Rodante Marcoleta traded sharp barbs regarding the ongoing investigation into anomalous flood control projects. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first on the agenda, as global oil prices continue to rise amid tensions in the Middle East, President Bongbong Marcos may soon be given the authority to step in. This as a House panel approves a proposal that would grant him emergency powers. Here is that report.
The House Ways and Means Committee has approved a proposal that would give President Bongbong Marcos the power to temporarily suspend or reduce excise taxes on fuel. This comes amid sharp increases in global oil prices brought about by the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. The approved unnumbered substitute bill seeks to amend Section 148 of the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997. Under the proposal, the President may suspend or reduce excise taxes on petroleum products if there is a national or global economic crisis. This will be based on the recommendation of the Development Budget Coordination Committee or DBCC, composed of economic managers from various government agencies. Coordination with the Department of Energy Secretary will also be required. Under the proposal, the tax suspension may only be implemented for up to 6 months. Congress may extend or terminate it earlier through a joint resolution, but the period must not exceed 1 year. The authority granted by the bill will only be valid until December 31, 2028. But if the President suspends the excise tax, will motorists immediately benefit from lower fuel prices? The answer from oil companies, at least not immediately.
We just need an idea. So, knowing the full cycle of your inventory or your supply system, gaano katagal para maubos yan, essentially? Yung inventory nyo na bayad na. Anong calculation nyo dyan? 2 buwan, 1 buwan?
It will be around 15 days. 15 to 20 days.
Bago maging effective?
Yes.
Eh, patay na ang kabayo. Diyos ko. Ha? So, again, these are things that we need to look at with the Department of Energy and the DOF on how we can make the immediate.
Some lawmakers even suspected that oil companies may be taking advantage of the current crisis.
Kaya lahat po ng binibenta nila ngayon, stock talaga yan before the war. At yung price na yan, talagang kikita sila dyan per liter ng almost 20 pesos because of this war.
Kaya nga, kapag bumababa, hindi kayo nakakapagbaba ka agad. Ang sinasabi is, kailangan muna namin ubusin yung inventory namin. O bakit ngayon, pag biglang taasan, immediate yung pagtaas? Why is there seemingly a double standard?
We also based we benchmark the pricing din sa maps po. So any movement, increase or decrease, should be effected immediately. However nga po dun sa monitoring, part kasi sa deregulation, we did not prescribe yung minimum reserve inventory ng isang oil company.
The Department of Energy is also seeking stronger regulatory powers during times of crisis. They are requesting that petroleum products and liquefied fuels be included in the list of basic necessities. Meanwhile, Marcos said the government is now looking for alternative countries that can supply oil in the Philippines. According to the President, the country's current oil supply remains sufficient and estimate does not include products passing through the Strait of Hormuz.
But the real problem here that everybody is having to deal with is hindi natin alam kung gaano katagal ito. Hindi natin, kasi yung presyo kung saan pupunta, hindi natin how long, kung tataas man, tumaas lang nga, gaano katagal ba yung pagtaas na yun? Ito ba ay pangmatagalan, permanent na ba ito? Ano bang mangyayari? Kasi kung alam natin kung ano magiging presyo ng langis, alam na natin ang effect. So makapaghanda na tayo. Pero ang presyo ng langis ay hindi lamang dahil sa supply, volatility is also a big factor. Pag hindi tayo nakakasiguro kung gaano katagal pa ito, even the supply will be affected. Kasi yung mga supplier ng langis, syempre sasabihin nila, yung nasa amin, hawakan muna namin. Baka maipit kami pag pinagbili namin ito, tapos tumagal ito, kami naman ang mauubusan. So they can be very conservative or less so. Depending again on the planning horizon, kung tawagin. If it's going to last this long, 1 month, 2 months, or 1 week, whatever it is. But we don't know. That's the problem. We do not know how long it's going to last, when the actual war is going to end, what the end will look like.
And day 2 of the staggered fuel price hike is now taking effect as oil companies continue to adjust pump prices this week. The Energy Department says the total increase could reach 17 to 24 pesos per liter, the biggest jump in recent years. This is driven by supply concerns amid the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. Now, to soften the impact on motorists, oil companies agreed to stagger the price adjustments over several days instead of implementing a one-time, big-time increase. On the second day, market leader Petron will increase diesel prices by 3 pesos and 80 cents per liter, 1 peso and 80 centavos for gasoline, and 6 pesos and 50 centavos for kerosene. And Meralco customers can expect higher power bills this month. That is after the power distributor announced a 64 centavo per kilowatt hour increase for the March billing period. The increase translates to about 129 pesos more in the monthly bill of households consuming 200 kilowatt hours. Meralco says the hike was mainly driven by higher transmission charges following a sharp rise in ancillary service costs.
Pagsipa ng Marso hanggang siguro bandang Hulyo ay tataas talaga ang demand sa kuryente at bunso dito ng pagtaas ng konsumo ng mga customers ng Meralco. This is across the board, no? Residential, commercial, and industrial customers, consumptions really go up during this period, during the summer months. No? Nagkaroon pa ng krisis sa gitnang silangan, Middle East, na maglalagay ng pressure sa fuel supply. Kaya those two factors are really most probably going to drive prices higher.
Metro Manila Council President Mayor Francis Zamora said that several local government units in NCR will adopt a 4-day work week. In an interview with The Big Story, Zamora said that NCR mayors will meet to discuss the inclusion of private companies in implementing this scheme. Now, under the plan, some offices will allow employees to work from home on Fridays, while others will implement remote work on Mondays. The move aims to conserve energy and reduce fuel consumption amid the rising fuel prices.
This is the directive of the President through Memorandum Circular 114, signed by Executive Secretary Ralph Recto. So the objective is clear, to be able to conserve on energy and fuel, and of course, with the fuel prices increasing already, the ability of our current budget to purchase fuel will be lessened because it is now more expensive. So we have to rationalize also the use of our vehicles. Also, if City Hall will not open fully on Fridays, that means a huge amount of savings will be achieved across the week to come. So this is something that we all fully support.
Since the government has implemented this 4-day work week, how can the private sector, or should the private sector be persuaded to do the same?
Actually, that is something that we will also discuss. The private sector, just like in cancellation of work, we can only cancel work in government offices, and when it comes to the cancellation of work in the private sector, we really leave it to the discretion of the heads of the offices in the companies.
And don't go away. We will be back with more stories after this short break. Stay with us. Good morning, I'm Dani Laurel, and here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. The Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry is calling for the removal of fuel excise taxes to ease the impact of surging oil prices. PCCI Chairman Emeritus George Barcelon told Storycon that businesses are bracing for higher costs in manufacturing, logistics, and consumer goods. According to Barcelon, suspending the fuel excise tax could give both businesses and consumers some breathing space amid the rising prices. The group added that the ongoing Middle East conflict has disrupted global trade routes, adding more uncertainty for businesses and the local economy. And joining us now to further discuss the impact of the rising fuel prices on the business sector is Perry Ferrer, the president of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Good morning, sir, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, good morning, Danny, and thank you for having the Philippine Chamber of Commerce in your show.
Sir, give us an idea of the business's biggest concerns, most immediate concerns right now.
Well, currently, we're bracing for the impact of this rising, not only the rising fuel costs, which will affect the logistics, transportation, and also the cost of our employees to get to work, but it's the downstream effect on the rising raw materials, the supply chain impact. So that's what we're bracing for, and we hope that this conflict in the Middle East gets resolved soon.
Well, of course, we're all hoping for that, no? As I just reported, you already had your chairman pushing, of course, for the suspension of the fuel excise taxes. We see that the proposal was passed yesterday. Are you, of course, happy about this? And how does this provide relief? Is this at least, something good for now? Are there any other things that you are calling for that the government can do for the businesses, apart from the suspension of the fuel excise tax?
Oh, definitely, Danny. We support the suspension, the temporary suspension of the excise tax. The excise tax for gasoline, it's 10 pesos, and for diesel, it's 6. It would certainly curb the increase, but hopefully it doesn't stop with the suspension of the excise tax. We should look at what other sources of funds that can mitigate and absorb the increase. As you mentioned earlier, the increases are between 17, 20, 24 pesos. So if it's 10 pesos, that's half. Now let's look for other sources and where it can mitigate the increase or absorb the increase. Because the increase in fuel cuts across everybody, every Filipino. As you know, the Filipino businesses, I'll just touch on the businesses first, 96% or 99%, 99.6% are MSMEs.
Correct.
And 90% of that are micro. So that's over 1 million businesses are micro. I'm emphasizing that because these are the businesses that uses public transportation. So if the fuel, which is the one that the jeepneys, the tricycles, and the buses increase even slightly, it will certainly impact the majority of the Filipinos that go to work. So the suspension of the excise tax, that's welcome news. But hopefully it doesn't stop there, because there's another, you take out 10 pesos or 6 pesos for diesel, which most of the public transportation uses. And that's
Correct.
only half. And
Yeah.
then how about the other half? So,
And the jump in prices has already been at 1.70%. No, it's pared down, so there's still quite some risk up on the upside for oil. Sir, you mentioned that already transport, logistics, and the downstream concerns. Can you specify for us which sectors are the most vulnerable right now? Which industries, and also which ones are hopefully the more resilient ones? No, or there's still some bright spots here.
yeah, from a private sector side, Danny, conserving and using efficient ways of energy is nothing new. We've done
Yeah.
this, we've been doing this for the past couple of years when the prices of fuel started to increase and also the cost of our raw materials and the supply chain started to increase. So it's nothing new for the manufacturing side. Where
Okay.
we are more concerned is on our MSMEs. This one, day to day, they live day to day, and a slight increase in fuel or transportation, we feel it when we buy our goods.
True.
So that's a very concerning pathway, and where the fuel increases will help or will hit the private sector. When it comes to the 4-day work week, it's welcome.
Yes.
And again, private sector has been implementing the 4-day work week. On the 4-day work week, the biggest beneficiary are the employees. The employees, they'll cut their transportation cost by 20%. They go to work four
Yes.
days and extend their work hours to have a full 40-hour work week. Similarly to the workers or the employees that use cars or vehicles, their own vehicles to work, it cuts down on traffic. Thank you. And also on the fuel. But what we don't really see is the jeepneys will still pasada, and the
Yeah.
buses will still go on the routes. Unfortunately, the jeepney, instead of having 14 passengers, they'll have 8. The buses,
Yeah.
instead of having 50 passengers, will have 30. So they'll have lesser income and yet paying more for the fuel.
Yeah.
So that's the balance that
Very, very
we are
tricky.
monitoring now.
Absolutely. Let's go on the topic of the 4-day work week. No, this was announced in specific LGUs and government offices. Can there possibly be a formal private sector directive, or even at least for the members of the chamber, that this 4-day work week will be implemented, or does that remain, a voluntary measure or something that the companies themselves need to decide upon?
Thank you, Danny. What we've been focusing on the private sector is implement more stringent efficiency savings and conservation measures within their businesses. We cannot mandate or make the 4-day work week compulsory, especially in healthcare. That one we
Of
need.
course.
In education, hopefully we don't do that. And also for factories that has already commitments and struggling now because of the potential higher cost of doing business. So they have to get their goods or merchandise out. But what we're doing on the 4-day work week is a lot of the factories are applying the compressed work week and staggered and splitting the shifts so we could cover the 7 days. So instead of working 8 hours a day, an employee works 4 days, longer hours, and that employee will still keep the same salary or compensation, work less days. And then there'll be another shift that will cover for the remaining weeks. So there's a lot of that shifting or managing the shifts going on now. So
How do we monitor that, sir, and make sure that the workers are compensated properly, and then there's transparency and accountability even as they reduce the number of days?
individually, the companies, through their human resources department, I believe they are inherently monitoring that. as the factories and the offices are already running on lean resources
Yeah.
because of the higher costs now of operating. So we want to keep the key people who we have now in our factories, keep them and ensure that they get the right compensation. Where we are able to assist our workers is, like that 4-day work week. They have 20% less on their cost. And looking at other avenues on where the whole company can still be competitive or at least survive through this hopefully temporary crisis.
Yeah, while we're at it, I'm afraid to even ask this question, but I'll have to. Are you expecting some layoffs or reduction in workforce because of this crisis?
Not right now, Danny. Not, there's still a lot of wishful thinking, I guess you can call it, that this will be a very short conflict in the Middle East. But the heads of these companies are looking forward. What if it lasts 6 months, or what if
Yes.
it lasts a year? Now, where the biggest concern is also the rising supply chain costs or the rising cost of goods that will impact the company. And with the rising cost of goods, it will impact the workers. So that we're looking. So we're really appealing, Danny. We couldn't understand why Meralco is increasing their price. We
Yes,
couldn't
we reported
understand.
that.
And 64 centavos per kilowatt hour. When you look at our power, over 62% comes from coal, which is from our partner country, Indonesia. Coal we import. Then we have renewable energy that is in place, which has the capacity now. And then we have Malampaya. So when you add all these, I'm just talking about electricity. We
Correct.
should have enough existing system that we, in the private sector, we don't understand why. Now, of all times, we're gonna increase the Meralco price, or sorry, the power prices. And is it because of supply and demand? More supply, you increase. So I think all the industries, including the power generation industries, I believe this is the time that we should all contribute to the survival of our economy and the survival of the Filipinos who are actually working.
But what's your practical call on the electricity issue as a chamber? What can Meralco do?
For the power generations, there is a lot. Our power generation, the majority comes from coal, and it's not from any crude oil that comes from the Middle East. So on that coal, we do expect the transportation from Indonesia coming to the Philippines of this coal. Of course, we expect increases in that transportation cost that uses bunker fuel. But it shouldn't translate to a significant rise in cost, because I don't know, I think there are 20 I can't recall how many tons of coal. When you divide that by the increase of the fuel in that ship, it shouldn't really translate that much. Then we have renewable energy that's already existing. And we thank the DOE for adding more capacity or generation from renewable, geothermal. So that's in place. And Malampaya. Let's not forget Malampaya for our gas, although it doesn't supply all of the gas, but it supplies the gas. And we get the Philippine government gets a lot of revenue from Malampaya, which could be used. I just want to say this. So hopefully our government can consider the revenue for Malampaya to be used to absorb this temporary increase in fuel. So there's a lot of sources where we believe,
Okay.
at least the private sector believes, that we can tap, at least just to absorb this increase in fuel, which should be temporary.
Okay, so either cap the electricity price increase for the month of March. They've just announced for March, no? And as as we reported, it was due to transmission or ancillary services from the grid. So you're calling, sir, for them to probably consider wag muna itong month of March.
Yes.
Maybe they can consider pushing that forward as the country is grappling with the fuel prices right now. Sir, let's talk about ayuda. Have you talked to the government about ayuda, especially to the MSMEs, and how much are you hoping for? Where are these sources going to come from?
We are, the chamber in the private sector is not 100% all for this handing out.
Okay.
We're looking for ways on how the majority, if not all, let's say the MSMEs, can benefit from proclamation or an executive order or legislation that will impact everyone. Similar, like the excise tax. Everybody benefits on reducing or suspending the excise tax instead of giving the drivers. I believe I heard it was 6,000 pesos. I don't know how long that will go.
Yeah.
So, and by suspending the excise tax, everybody benefits. Logistics cost will remain lower, instead of the full brunt. That's why suspending the excise tax, in our opinion, is not enough. Hopefully, they can do a little bit reduction, temporary reduction of the VAT or other sources.
Okay. Yeah.
And to really cushion the increase of this fuel price hikes. We're also requesting in the government, we always hear about that Strait of Hormuz. Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah.
But only 20% of the crude oil comes from Strait of Hormuz. So there's 80% that we can possibly tap. The Philippines, there's only one refinery in the Philippines, which is the Petron refinery. And that Petron refinery definitely relies on the crude oil that comes from the Middle East. And it's the type of that light crude that the refinery is tuned to refine. But most of the fuel we import, Danny, are refined fuel.
Yeah.
Diesel, gasoline, and such. So now we should really secure or source other areas where we can work with to supply the Philippines this refined fuel. We have a lot of neighbors from South Korea, Malaysia, Singapore. I'm just talking refined fuel. And we're all, except for Korea, we're all in ASEAN. That we should really start making this a priority in the discussions. While we are hosting, the timing is good, we're hosting ASEAN, and we should really secure supply from our ASEAN neighbors like Malaysia and Singapore for this refined fuel, and Indonesia for coal for our base load power plants.
Sir, since we're on the topic, your thoughts on the oil deregulation law. Should that be revisited? Should the government start regulating and being able to put caps on the prices of fuel once again, which some analysts have said that could cause black markets to come out?
That's correct. There's the good and the bad whenever you make a decision, but certainly it should be revisited. We should look globally. The uncertainty, I think, will not end anytime soon. I'm not saying the conflict, but just the uncertainty of energy sources, food sources, and we should really revisit our energy security, our enabling laws on energy security, and others, including food. So the conflict in the Middle East, we wish it would stop soon, end soon, but there could be one in the near term somewhere. So we in the Philippines and our neighbors should really prioritize our regional security when it comes to energy, food, water, and others. With that, we should look at our old laws that
Okay.
can make it flexible now. When we look at the emergency powers that which we support giving to the president, it limits it to excise tax. So why don't we broaden it a little bit, but make it stricter on how it's applied? So we don't have to go back to Congress and asking for more special powers. What if we want to touch VAT or others? Then we have to go through that process. But if we give certain authority to certain government officials, but really be strict on how it's implemented, then we can be more flexible and enact quickly. We're giving it now to the president, and yet for 2 days now, the fuel prices have increased. See, we're like always a few days or a week behind, and now it has to go through this motion of
Yeah.
signing and approval, which we need to, and we don't want to shortcut anything. But hopefully, we would have, hindsight is 2020. We should have done it earlier, so to lessen the impact and the, quote unquote panic. So what are we gonna do with all these increases? Because it's certainly a shock when you look at a 30 to 45% increase in cost of fuel. 10%, we can still manage it, but when you look at this big
is
spike in a
biggest
short
jump
period of
in
time,
history.
it's
Indeed.
tough.
Sir,
It's tough to swallow.
last question before we let you go. How is the private sector making sure that during these difficult periods, it will be business as usual and that the companies are resilient enough to get through these times?
This conflict and this increase in potential increase in the supply chain or logistics and the goods is probably a first that will impact the private sector on this short period of time. So the private sector is looking at really some innovative ways, some innovation, and some disruptive models within the companies and each of these companies on how to mitigate and absorb these shocks temporarily. And I don't think we can be able to absorb it long term. Now, these are the large companies, Danny, which has the resources. Now, when you look at the 1.2 million companies, businesses that are the micro and small, I won't even touch the medium. That's where we are really concerned on how all this, the impact of the increases will they survive? That's the biggest concern now of the private sector, which will affect all Filipinos, no matter where you are. And we're really scrambling our brains discussing how can we really help. And the bottom line immediately is let's not increase any of this fuel, because increasing fuel charges will snowball, or the effect is increase in goods, transportation. It really impacts everyone.
So a lot of focus
it's
on
difficult. It's difficult now.
On the most vulnerable sectors is the most important thing, of course, if your chamber's agenda here. Sir, thank you so much, and wishing you all the luck as you navigate, of course, these very difficult times. Perry Ferrer, President of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Good morning, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Danny.
And stay tuned. Morning Matters will be back after this short break. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, said existing calamity and contingency funds could be tapped to provide immediate support to the sectors affected by rising oil prices. Now, during a hearing on Tuesday, Gatchalian asked the Department of Budget and Management about the availability of the funds. He also pointed out that sustained oil prices of around $100 per barrel could already be considered a crisis. The senator added that any funds used must be replenished as they are primarily reserved for natural disasters, particularly typhoons.
DBM was there, tinanong namin point blank kung pwedeng gamitin yung Calamity Fund under NDRRM Fund. Dahil we can interpret this as a man-made calamity at ang spillover niya ay dito sa Pilipinas, sa bansa natin. At under the law, pwede rin kasi doon economic disruptions. So broadly, pwedeng ma-interpret na itong man-made calamity in Iran is creating economic disruptions sa pamumuhay ng tao. At sabi ng DBM, initially, in their initial interpretation, pwedeng gamitin yung Calamity Fund. Malaki ang Calamity Fund natin this year. That's about 39 billion pesos. So if we add the Calamity Fund plus the contingent fund, aabot yan ang contingent is about 13-14 billion. Aabot yan around 52 billion. So both funds, tingin ko for now, enough siya para sa kung talagang maging mahaba at prolonged itong elevated prices. Meron madaling pagkukunan ng ang executive.
Meanwhile, Congressman Rolando Valeriano says industry practices should adjust during these extraordinary times. In an interview with 1PH's Sa Totoo Lang, Valeriano, who serves as the vice chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, noted that while Filipinos are being asked to tighten their belts, oil companies should also help ease the burden on consumers.
Yun nga po, industry practice, pero in this time now na meron tayong war, dapat bumabali rin ng konti yung industry practice, di po ba? In other words, moderate the greed. Kung meron man nagpapahirap sa mga panahon na to, iyan yung mga oil player na yan.
The lawmaker added that President Marcos has already moved to address the issue by seeking emergency powers. He said if the excise tax is removed, pump prices could immediately drop by about 6 pesos per liter for diesel.
Tinanong ko rin naman kanina yung independent player and even the DOE. Ganito ba kasimple yan? Ngayon, 65 ang diesel. Pag tinanggal mo yung excise tax, which is 6 pesos, 59 na sa pump price, yes daw. So, ganun po dapat kabilis din para maramdaman din kaagad ng tao.
Senate President Pro Tempore Ping Lacson and Senator Rodante Marcoleta figured in a heated exchange during Tuesday's plenary session. Mobile journalist Merimon Reyes reports for us.
Dahil gusto din lamang ni Senator Marcoleta na lagi siyang bida bilang dating chairman ng BRC o sa usaping West Philippine Sea o anumang issue involving China o dili kaya ay sa usaping restitution na mag-asawang Diskaya, siya na nga ang tunay na bida sa aking magiging pahayag sa mga sandaling ito.
These words from Senate President Pro Tempore Ping Lacson couldn't be any clearer. Senator Rodante Marcoleta is rubbing him the wrong way, and for several reasons, according to the seasoned lawmaker.
Enough is enough. Patuloy po kayo sa pag-atake sa akin. I refuse to apologize and feed on Senator Marcoleta's ego and pride.
It could have triggered Marcoleta to supposedly target him. Recall that before Lacson became chairman of the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, it was Marcoleta that called the shots in the powerful panel. Senator Ping believes the ill feelings could have started when he questioned his colleagues' allegedly half-baked interpretation and request to junk the impeachment case against Vice President Sara Duterte.
Ewan ko, Mr. President, simula nang nasopla ko si Senator Marcoleta sa floor, ay tila nagtanim na siya ng poot sa kanyang dibdib.
Then, there could be Lacson's revelation of the supposed syndicates behind the flood control scandal last year. The Senate President Pro Tempore had since accused Marcoleta of lawyering for King and Queen of Contractors, Curly and Sara Diskaya.
He exposed his ignorance as a member of the bar, particularly on the revised rules on criminal procedure, even as he invoked the issue of impartiality at the top of his voice and out of order and decorum, continuously interrupting the chairman and everybody else, while shamelessly appearing to act as counsel for the Diskaya couple, without even disclosing before the committee members that one of his family members was an independent director of insurance companies that provided bonds for contractors owned by the 207 billion peso flood control contractors, Curly and Sara Diskaya.
Lacson also blasted Marcoleta for coming up with a so-called minority report when the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee is yet to release official findings from the flood control scandal probe.
Siya na nga itong gawa ng mga bagay na wala naman sa alituntunin ng Senado. Pagkatapos, ako ang pagbibintangan niya na epal, wala sa lugar, wala sa hulog. Saganang akin lang din naman, kagulat-gulat po ba ang naging reaksyon ng representasyon na ito na walang lugar ang ulat na yan kundi sa basurahan.
Then, it's Marcoleta's turn to hit back.
Po yung nagtataka Ginoong Pangulo, pagka po pala si Senator Ping Lacson na magdi-deliver ng privilege speech, wala pa po tayong nate-take up na kahit ano. Siya pala'y masyadong special dito sa chamber natin. Kasi po, pagka kami, lalong-lalo na ako, minsan patatapusin na lahat muna. Aabot po ng halos alas 7 hanggang alas 8 ng gabi. Kaya kung minsan po, pag ako nagdi-deliver ng speech, wala na si Senator Lacson. Ganun po pala siya ka-importante.
At this point, other senators chimed in.
Nangyari po kasi kahapon, just sa speech ni Senator Marcoleta, with due respect to the two sides, binanggit po niya yung pangalan ni Senator Lacson. So, it is obvious that Senator Lacson would like to respond. So, usually, when it is personal and collective privilege, especially when they're trying to defend themselves, kasi gusto mong i-defend sana ng sarili mo, binibigyan po natin ng pagkakataon. Ang senador na tumayo at any given point in time. Kaya kung sinabi din po sa akin ni Senator Marcoleta kahapon na ito po ay personal and collective dahil galit ako kay Senator Lacson, ginawa kong agad-agad. Pero hindi po niya kwento sa akin ano yung purpose ng kanyang speech. Kaya nung ninapitan niya po ako for speech, binabigyan po natin.
Hindi ko po alam, Sir President, Your Honor, kung paano ko, sana ko mag-uumpisa sapagkat hindi ako ang subject matter ng aking diniliver na privilege speech kahapon. Kaya kung sagutin at iisa-isahin sa inyo, ngunit ang nangyari, parang ad hominem ang nangyari. Sa akin po, natutukoy lahat ang inyong privilege speech ngayon, samantalang ang inaasahan ko ay sasagutin nyo yung privilege speech kahapon.
Negative po. Siguradong hindi po yon.
Bakit
kayo
po?
po naglilist, sino pa po nagsimula nito? Nung una pong privilege speech ninyo, hindi ko na sinagot kasi ayoko magkagulo. Pero enough is enough. Kahapon, nanonood sa aking opisina, gusto kong bumaba, kaya lang malalim na ang gabi at ayoko maabala yung trabaho sa Senado. Kaya nagsabi ako sa ating Senate President at ito'y na-manifest niya kahapon, narinig ko, na I was told na sasagot ako ngayong araw na ito. Wala pong gustong maglihis sa usaping flood control. Ako nga po, very passionate po ako dyan, mulat sa pool. Wala po kayo rito. Ako po'y talagang lumalaban sa korupsyon.
At some point, Marcoleta also questioned why he is being tagged as pro-China. He later challenged Lacson to attend a supposed Foreign Affairs Committee hearing this week.
Sa March 12 po, Mr. President, Senator Lacson, sana po may panahon kayo sapagkat ipinatawag ko sa magitan ng isang resolution at ito po ay alam na ni Senator Erwin. Pinatawag ko po ang NAMRIA, pinatawag ko po ang Philippine Coast Guard, Philippine Navy, ang DFA, pinatawag ko rin po si Justice Carpio at saka yung professor sa UP. At kung sino man po ang interesado, pero once and for all, malaman po natin dito kung sino ang sinungaling, kung sino ang makatsina, kung sino ang naggagaling-galingan at nagpapanggap na expert in international law.
Mr. President, may we hear from the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee because his name was mentioned. May I just confirm if indeed he will call for a hearing and invite those people mentioned?
This morning, I have received a letter from the Department of Foreign Affairs citing that they cannot attend, including NAMRIA, Mr. Chair, and we have already written to the various chiefs of staff of the members of the Committee on Foreign Affairs. They cited, including NAMRIA, that they cannot attend because of the fact that it is a matter of national security, Mr. President. And I also have a copy that will be sent to your office, Mr. President. The reason given by NAMRIA, the Armed Forces of the Philippines.
The gentleman from Pampanga and Tarlac is confirming something that is not confirmed.
When Marcoleta insisted that there's already a date for the hearing, Lacson was adamant.
This is something between the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee and the gentleman from Tarlac and Pampanga, Mr. President.
Hindi po, tinatanong ko po kayo.
No,
kasi,
I don't know Administrative Order number 29.
Oh, hindi po ninyo alam, sasabihin ko sa inyo.
I don't need to
ko.
know, Mr. President. I'm not interested. Hindi po ko rin interesado sa sinasabi ninyo.
In the end, Lacson's privileged speech, Marcoleta's reply, and all other responses that came out of the two senators square off at the plenary were all referred to the Upper Chamber's Rules Committee. Kapatid Mobile journalist Mary Mon Reyes, we are One News.
And don't go away, more matters to discuss after this break. Keep it here on One News.